Kilted balls.
Balls. Yeah,
Haha. I changed it up today. Went a little higher.
sounded great. Yes, you are slightly closer to the to your camera, looks like.
Oh, I can be like further away.
Nice. That's all
Very.
automatic too, right? I mean, you
Oh yeah,
guys
that's
don't even
automatic.
want to know what's behind the scenes.
Yeah, so the we had a little technical difficulties getting my Zoom to work today, but you know, joys of being a techie, we have lots of computers, so we just switched to a different computer. And we're drinking some sweet baby Jesus porter. So welcome to the
Nice.
Kilted Balls podcast, baby.
Welcome everybody. And I hope everyone had a much better week than I did.
We are super excited to hear about your week.
So, are we going to get right into it? Is there
Get
anything else we want to
let's
cover
let's rip
first?
the band-aid off. Let's rip the band-aid off.
Okay. I think that there's, and today, actually, today's going to be a mix because it is going to be crypto related, but also we talk a lot about everything else we've been talking about. A lot of just your choices as a person
Yes,
and
yes.
going through life. So we've said it a number of times. And actually, it's funny. I was at a friend's house this weekend, and he listens. And I had said, "Hey, if I tell you what we're going to be talking about, is that going to ruin it for you?" And he's like, "Oh no." He's like, "Maybe I can, give some ideas or chime in." And I told him the story. He had nothing to say. That sucks.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised he had nothing to say.
So we always say if something happens, if something bad happens in crypto, it's your fault. So last Wednesday, right after we recorded, I was at my computer at work and I noticed I was signing back into my Gala for whatever reason, because sometimes it just kicks out. I check my nodes and check everything like that. And I noticed there was a bunch of weird transactions. Now, sometimes Gala, like you and I had just talked, they just changed the name of Townstar.
They
So
did.
I wasn't sure like if they changed something with the tokens to like make them different.
And
So they were
earlier in the year, they changed all of our tokens. Like we didn't have a
yes, and
choice. They were just
there was a token swap. So
yeah.
I thought that maybe it was something like that. And so I wrote tech support and I was like, hey, is there something going on? And they're like, oh, we don't have access to your wallet. Blah blah blah. Change your password. So then I started looking some more and I realized that everything in my Gala wallet was I lie. I keep on saying everything of value in my Gala wallet was gone. So the first thing I was just like, okay, what did I do wrong? Because
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about that. There's not
Yes.
like any place where it's like someone could figure out my 12 or 24 secret
Right.
words and take over my account or anything like that. So yeah, I'm shortening this part of the story up, but what happened was I figured it out the Saturday before. I was trying to tell Oliver about they have a new game. It's almost like a Frogger on the iOS and on Android
Mm-hmm.
that you can get. Now I couldn't figure out the name, so I just typed in Gala Games into my web browser on my phone, and I just clicked on the top one, and it said to put in your username and password, and I just put it in, and it was a bad site. So I gave all my information, and then also a mistake that I had made. I made my transfer password the same as my password. So even if they would have been able to get in without knowing my transfer password, because it's just another layer of protection, I just had them both the same. It was my fault. So
Well, it's
at
not your
the
fault.
no,
It's
it's not my fault. You're right. It's
right.
not my fault.
We don't victim blame here.
It was my mistake. It
Right.
was my mistake. So yeah,
But you
it
have
really
two-factor
sucked.
authentication, don't you?
No, you have this. See, I thought I had two-factor authentication, and
Yeah.
I do have two-factor
So
on
how
that.
did they log in without your two-factor
I'm not sure.
authentication? Does it go to your phone or to your email?
It goes to my phone. No, it's on my authenticator app, but I don't have to type it in all the time. I don't
Oh,
know. I don't know what makes it where I have to type it in and whatnot. You figure a new computer from a new IP, you
would
should have to type
require
it
it.
in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't even consider that extra layer because I do know on my
Because I don't have
authenticator app.
two-factor authentication on my Gala. And
I
I
do.
always think to myself, oh, shoot, I should put that on. But now I'm like, okay, does it even matter? Is it smoke and mirrors? Because it didn't stop them from transferring yours.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's on my authenticator app.
So how does that work?
I'm not sure. But anyways, so I mean I still have my node. I still have all my music and I still have a few basic NFTs. But the hard part is that, we've talked about it, not selling at the top.
Mm-hmm.
When we were playing Town Star, and I don't know, I'd have to look back at my notes. I bet you I have it. But when we were really doing all that stuff, especially at the beginning of 2022, I was making a couple $1,000s playing Town Star
Yes, I
pretty
remember
regularly.
that.
And I didn't sell. Didn't sell any of those tokens. I wrote them all the way down to nothing. But the big thing is they're all gone. All my Gala's gone, like my Gala tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, at the top it was like $100,000 that I had put in there,
Right.
not mentioning everything, the money that I had made playing games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's you had made a joke. I'm going to Universal this weekend
Mm-hmm.
for Oliver's birthday, and you made the joke that that's not what someone who's lost, a whole bunch of money does usually. But I mean, thankfully, like I wasn't planning on taking that money out this month. I wasn't planning on taking out this
Well, that
year.
wasn't the actual joke. The actual joke was that Universal is the same amount of money,
Oh yeah,
$100,000.
yeah, hundred thousand
That's
dollars.
the
Yes,
actual
you
joke.
did say that too. You did say that too.
Because that's what
So
everybody says. They're like, oh, I'm going to be bankrupt. I'm going to Walt Disney World. So they're like,
no, we're
oh,
gonna be able. We have my timeshare. I was able to switch that, and then I didn't have to pay any extra. So our room and board is $150. So
nice.
just $1 million to get into
Just $1
Universal.
million to get in. And then I think it's 2 million to eat there. I'm not sure, but I think that's what I've heard.
I've heard some good hacks about keeping peanut butter in one pocket and jelly in another, right between your
Nice.
cheeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and then that kind of counts as getting the butter beer from the Harry Potter. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
So yeah, it was not an exciting week, and I know that day we're talking about stress, and I know that I was acting differently that day. I was very, I was just very internal.
And we
I
just
was.
talked about that.
We just
Just
talked
talked
about
about
that.
that.
Yeah, that's
Which
something. Go ahead.
that leads me to another thing that we just started talking about today. So ladies and gentlemen, our grateful listeners, this comes like right off of today's presses. When you're having an issue like this issue, like you're having stuff go on, we were talking about, is it better to talk about it
Oh yeah,
and get it out there, or is it better not to? And so that happened to you, and you instantly communicated with people about that happening to you and trying to
yes.
work it out. And was that, I assume that was better.
I think that I think it was helpful, yes, because it also, I guess the big thing is that it helped me figure out what happened. Because when I first told you and I first told Jason, I didn't know what I had done wrong. I couldn't have
Right.
figured it out. And at first it looked like, because it showed me logging in on Saturday, then it showed everything happening on Wednesday, because I could go back and I looked at what was going on my computer. I was like, okay, I was on there Saturday, and everything happened on Wednesday. It looked like.
Right.
So, but then when I went back and looked, it was like, okay, well, I was not on Gala's site. Well, I forget how it was. No, Yeah, because I had noticed it on Wednesday. So on Saturday, like I was on and I was like, well, I logged on and I couldn't remember logging on. So I'm like, did someone like somehow be able to make my computer, like get into my computer and be able to do stuff? I mean, no one's
Right.
getting in the warehouse. Yeah,
I
and I
wouldn't
mean,
think so.
no one was in the house here. So it was just like I couldn't figure it out. But then I realized, like, oh, I was talking to Ali about that game. And then I noticed because it was dashes in between Gala games
Right, right.
instead of periods.
And so now you're fairly confident that it was a phishing site that caught
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
That that sucks.
And
Big suckage.
I think talking about it helped. I mean, I can joke like I'm gonna have to work more now. I'm not gonna be able to retire as fast. That's and I guess at the same time, if I were to turn around and sell it, obviously it wasn't gonna be that much, but I wasn't gonna sell it. I wasn't gonna sell at the bottom. And we talk about that all the
Well,
time.
and you hope it was the bottom.
Yes. Well, I think we're above the bottom right now because we're not as low as we were, although Gala is.
Uh,
And well, that's another thing. That's funny that you brought that up. So so okay. When I make mistakes, I like to try to what's the lesson? I mean, we talk about it on here, but that's actually how I think. Like, okay, what lesson am
yes.
I supposed to learn here? And Jason had pointed out, well, you're doing it with 100,000 instead of you're doing it with 1 million in a few years, and that could very well be a thing. And yes, that would hurt more at 55 to lose, even 100,000 than it is right now to
Right.
lose that. But I was just like going through what am I like what's the problem? Like what am I supposed to learn? Like what's the lesson here? And part of me wondered like okay, is Gala not going to bounce back? I mean, it
Right.
seems like they're amazing and they have and it seems like they're doing a lot of good stuff. But what if all that stuff just goes to zero? So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
like, those are things that we don't know.
we don't know that. And they could get bought out, right? Like they're doing all of this cool stuff. And like I was watching some kiddos today playing a game on their phone or yesterday. And I like looked over their shoulders. I'm like, what are you playing? And they're like super into this game and they're loving it. And I'm like looking at them like, that looks like spider tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Totally wasn't spider tanks. Right.
Mm,
And like I'm looking and I'm like, okay, how many of these games are based on other games?
mm-hmm,
And is Gala like take our farming game. Like that was
mm-hmm.
based on Farmville,
Yeah.
right? And so if somebody makes that into a phone app, they've crushed you, Gala. Gala, you're too
Mm-hmm.
slow. Like people aren't playing on PCs as much as on their phones.
Yeah.
And like a phone could buy you up just to take that technology and put it on a phone. And all of a sudden, all the Gala is worth zero,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you're running all of this on a cloud server and they could just run it on their servers.
Yeah. And I mean, Gala did just they bought, I think, they bought a company that had like 10 or 12 phone app games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Same,
And
for that purpose, I imagine.
well, yeah,
To get in
yeah,
front of more
trying to stay
people.
ahead of the curve,
Mm-hmm.
but they might not. So
Yeah.
yeah, like if the
And,
lesson could
and
be that
so it
they
could be
go
that
out.
too. Like, just be careful. And I've talked about that, and we've talked about that. Like this next bull run coming up, like not having, I'm not going to have 30 different coins that I'm following.
Yes.
I'm not going to, what I'm not going to say I'm not, but I'm probably not going to find that 1000x that you put a little bit in and it goes crazy. And I'm fine with that.
Well, and here's what I was thinking. I don't know. This has been marinating in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Marinating in my brain. You have all these little tokens. And so you're like, you know what? I'm going to buy $10 worth. I'm going to buy $100 worth.
Mm-hmm.
And at 10x's,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. And everybody's like, yes, at 10x's. it made me $1,000. $1,000 is nothing to sneeze at.
Mm-hmm.
But for the risk, like, oh, great. It made me $1,000. Like $1,000 is not life changing,
Yeah.
right? Like we're not getting into phone numbers here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like it would have to do something crazy. And for some of these things, and we've been talking about this, like when people are like, oh my gosh, XRP is going to go to 300, you're like, is it? Like it
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't make any sense in the economics that it would go to 300 or 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you're like, okay, so what if it does like what we want to do? What if it goes to $2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's not going to be life changing money.
Yeah.
Right. And so then it becomes, is it worth the risk? Is it worth the stress? And one of the things I was thinking is similar. Like I was looking at my trading stuff earlier and I was like, you know what? Maybe what I need to do is focus on two coins,
Mm-hmm.
say XRP and Bitcoin. And if I'm going to day trade, I'm only going to day trade those. I'm not going to worry about any of the other stuff. I'm going to follow their trends because I feel really good about noticing trends on a single thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good about noticing the trends on 100 things.
Yeah. Well, you're, and Lifer used to say this: if you're not spending time looking at all the charts, it's different. It's a full-time job.
It's a full-time gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you're going to get some of those. I think you're going to keep seeing these things where it jumps and falls, jumps and falls. And, and I don't know. I think I would still gamble with futures, but I don't think I would make futures my livelihood.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I would
Well,
play
we've
it
learned
like
that.
I'd play
We've
the
talked
lotto.
about that doing our taxes. Like, okay, well, we got liquidated a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that hurts. Speaking about that, I don't think I talked about this last time. I spent some time driving my daughter back to college last time, and somehow, like towards the end of the trip, I don't know why, but we started talking about finances
Mm-hmm.
and making your money work for you and like all of these things that you and I have talked about a ton, but we didn't learn until post college almost, like a little
Yeah.
bit in college, but
Yeah.
really post college. And I'm like, she was like really interested in it. And we were talking about it. And she was like, yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, could you imagine going back to being 18 years old and I don't know, starting to throw $1,000 into a 401k or 2,000 into a
Mm-hmm.
401k? Like you'd probably be feeling pretty good about now
Mm-hmm.
if that was your commitment
Yes.
that, or not even that, like her thing, like we started talking about like CDs because our girls have always gotten CDs. And so while she had been home that time, we were talking about your CD is worth 1%. That's stupid. Like like it wasn't stupid by her, but we're like 1% is stupid. Take the penalty, put that in, get 5%.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, is that like the right idea for a lot of this stuff? I'm like, that's the right idea for lots of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you start putting it into that stuff and you start compounding it.
Yeah. Now, even
Yes.
if it's $100,
Yeah. Well, I'm like
because
the
then you get in
trick.
the habit.
Yes. And the trick that I don't think people get, even to this day, is you make your money work for you. You do passive income strategies
Yeah.
that are in your row. And I do not put rentals in passive income. FYI.
You know.
No, because you got to bust your ass with a rental. It's not passive, right? But I said if you find something that's a passive, it's a rinse and repeat opportunity.
Yes.
And I go, and so like you have these CDs. I go, and yeah, they're great and they're passive, but they're making you $1.
Yeah.
They're making you $10. I'm like, so you do these bigger CDs. I go, and then you rinse and repeat. You get the new money, you put it in, you do the thing. And I go, you want that kind of a thing. I go, so that your working stuff is for fun and your passive is doing its gig. It's doing your job. So that was my feels. That was my thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Super awesome.
Well, I think it's important I was excited that she was excited, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is kind of my jam. This is my jam. And she's like, this is really interesting stuff. And I'm like, well, you're at an age now where it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and as you
Yes.
start going into the real world, you need to like think about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, people, rentals can be passive if you have like companies running them.
Yes, exactly.
But if you're doing all the work, that gives you an income, but it's good. It's just you doing work. So,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, is what it is. So, yeah. So, interesting side note. And listeners, we would be super interested to know how you handle issues. Like when you have something that goes bad or goes crappy or is traumatic, do you find talking about it, journaling, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
to help? Does that help you? Or do you find, and this sounds even weird to even say it out loud, do you
Mm-hmm.
find holding it all in helps you? Like I can't, I internalize a lot of stuff, but if it's something that I know I need to get rid of,
Yeah.
like I have like a subconscious rule where if I have something that's making me grumpy and like somebody ticks me off, I start picking people who I can tell that thing to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's specific. Like somebody earlier was like, I really wish like you would share this or share this, share this. I'm like, you're not that person. Other
Yeah.
people are that person for different things. Like each person has their own thing that I use them for, because otherwise you overwhelm people with bitching, and each
Mm-hmm.
person has their own connection to you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll be like, okay, this person needs to hear that. Then I'll call up like my sister, you need to hear this. Call up so
Mm-hmm.
and so, they need to hear this. And once I get through about 3 or 4 of those people, then that trauma goes away and I feel good.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like everybody doesn't get all the stories.
Yes.
Right. It's
Probably a good
mixed up.
idea.
Right. Well, like you and I get everything 90% of the time. Right.
Yeah.
But that's a little bit different. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just different. We're literally talking all the time. I had somebody recently going, have you talked to Jared lately? I'm like, I mean, I don't know, like every day.
Yeah.
They're like, what you do? I'm like, yeah, is that weird? Like, it doesn't feel weird.
Yeah.
It
Sometimes
feels
not on
weird.
Saturdays.
Yeah, there's sometimes on a Saturday, maybe a Sunday we don't, but
Yeah.
a lot, I would
So
say.
that's not a listener. It sounds like it's not someone who listens.
No, 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 no. That person was not a listener. I think they listen sometimes, but I think it's hit or miss, right?
Okay.
But yeah, I'm like, yeah. And I was actually confused by the question, because I'm like, I really thought that person would like know better. So I was like it's
Can't wait
weird
to
that
get filled in later.
I'm like, it's weird that you ask. Like I would expect that from like, somebody who doesn't know us.
Yeah.
But if you know us, like I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not weird, because maybe people don't talk that much, and that's fine too. But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
not
that's true.
us. That's not us. I don't think, not us.
I agree.
So it is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So cool, cool, cool. And that the only bad thing that happened? Nothing else?
Nothing I can remember. Did something else bad happen that I can't remember?
No, but you were like, it was just such a bad week, and that's bad, but it's not like
No, I mean,
atrocious.
I said I hope that people had a better week than I
Oh,
did.
that's true. That's true. And I don't
Yes.
know, like you would hope that they did. Like it'd be hard to have a worse week than that,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not. Oh my gosh. I have a question for you.
Mm.
this is probably going to upset some of our listeners. So, listeners, I apologize in advance. I'm driving the other day and I'm with one of my daughters and we're passing a cemetery, right?
Mhm.
You know the cemetery I'm talking about. And like a whole bunch of stones are decorated, right? And it
Mhm.
looks like some people just recently changed out some of the flowers. And I was like, why do you think people do that? And they were like, well, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, like are they do they want it to look beautiful for them because they're visiting? Are they doing it to honor the dead? I go, do they think the dead people are there? I go, because very few religions think the dead people are there. I'm like, or like, I'm like asking, and they're like, well, I think they're like, first off, people do it to honor their dead. And I'm like, no, they don't. And they're like, yeah, like in the Mexican culture with Cinco de Mayo and Day of the Dead. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I would totally buy that if we had anybody who was Hispanic in that area.
Mhm.
I'm like, that doesn't fit that area. And I go,
Mhm.
so I go, I'm just wondering, is that like a thing? Is that something you're expected to do? Like, we've been dealing with death a lot. And I'm like, that's not
Yeah.
something I ever like think about.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question because, like, for myself, I don't want to be buried. I'd
Yeah.
rather just be like burn me up and scatter my ashes someplace.
So I
But
was I was planning on half of that.
you're planning on scattering?
No, no, no. Burning you up like in a nice
Okay.
smoker
Oh,
just
there
until you were
you
crispy.
go. But there are people who very much say like you should be buried because it's for the people who are still here. They have that connection, or they go visit, or this and that. And I
Yes.
guess when we were younger and we had friends pass, I would go visit grave sites. But I mean, I haven't in, you know, 20 odd years now.
I mean,
So is that a thing?
I
I
can't
don't know.
remember the last time I visited, say, my dad's gravesite. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know if I've ever visited our two best friends.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, but I don't, people, if you're judging me, that's totally cool. But you've heard us talk before. I don't view death that way.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like if I'm want to talk to my dead, I talk to them wherever I'm at.
Yes.
It's similar to people who like think they have to go to church versus people that don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think you need to be at church to commune with God,
Yeah.
which a lot of times people will be like, but why do you go to church every Sunday? It's a different thing. I'm going to church every Sunday, not to just commune with God. Like there's a bigger picture there, bigger
Yes.
stuff that I'm
Yeah.
doing, right? Like I
Well,
can commune with God anytime.
yeah. Well, I can remember dropping off pennies for our one friend who used to bean us with pennies and
Oh my God.
finding pennies in random spots. I was like, okay, he's saying hi. I need to go drop off some pennies. So
That
I do
is
remember
terrific.
doing that.
That is terrific. And you
Mhm.
bring up another thought, and I was thinking about this recently, and there was something that just came up that made me think of it. Maybe it was our buddy Jason talking,
Mhm.
but somebody asked me, and you can tell, like, you can always tell when it's a listener asking, right? Because they ask questions
Mhm.
that are like about stuff we talked about. And they're like, how do you like use your powers? They're like, when you're like talking to the universe to make a connection with somebody, like, how does that work? And I'm like, I don't know if I could explain that in any meaningful way. Like, I'm like, I don't. I go, I'll try. Like, I go, I'll
Mhm.
tell you like what the feels are.
Mhm.
I go, but I can't tell you, like, I go, it's not like a thing. Like, I'm not a wizard who's like casting an incantation,
That's true.
right?
But
Like,
you are powerful. I explained today that you are powerful because I was laughing at your polo, and I had said something to Gina, and she's like, "Oh, does he have powers like that?" And I said, "Oh yeah, like for sure." Like,
Well, and like I was laughing because I'm like, I don't like people will often be like, or maybe it's just me reflecting. They're like, you're such a science guy. How can you think about like stuff like that can happen? I'm like,
Yeah.
because I'm such a science guy, that's why I think that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't know the bare minimum of entanglement.
Yeah.
Like, like there's so much out there that we don't get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying you can't explain it, but like I was laughing with one of the big jokes right now is my littlest guy like keeps like talking to dead people and seeing dead people.
Mm-hmm.
And in our family, that's not like a weird, like it's weird, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. It's more like, look, he's got gifts too.
Yeah.
Like you know, it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, neat. And it was funny because one of my girls was like talking about it the other day. And I'm like, well, remember, I'm like, you had powers too until you let it go to hell. Like that's on
Mm-hmm.
you. Right. Like my one daughter, and this used to be a fun trick that I would show people all the
That's
time. And you
exactly what I
remember
was
this,
thinking.
right?
Yep.
Right. I would take a deck of cards, listeners, and this is no lie. Kilted will tell you he's seen it numerous times. When she was little, I would take a deck of cards and I'd be like, pick a card. And people would be like, five of hearts. And she would reach up, not seeing the cards, and grab the five of hearts and give them to people
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And people are like, well, it's because you're telling her the card. And I'd be like, you think so? I go, watch this. And I would turn the cards so she could see them and be like, grab the seven of clubs. And she would grab some random ass card.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, she can't do it when she sees the cards. She can literally only do it when she can't see the cards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, the visual messes her up.
Mm-hmm.
I go,
She
and
doesn't know what they are.
she doesn't know what they are. She knows like what I want, and then she's not looking for colors or anything. She's just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is what he wants, and gives it to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so like that was like a thing, and it was a thing in here all the time. Amy,
Yeah.
Amy always talks about the fact that I can like control animals all the time. Like that's like a thing she always laughs about with people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
she'll be like, oh, watch. She'll be like, hey, the kids want to pet that. Will you tell it to come over here? And I'll be like, yeah. Like we'll be at the zoo and like all of a sudden like a rhino comes walking over
Mm-hmm.
and people will be like, how do you do that? I'm like, it's not like a thing. Like I don't think about doing things. I just do the thing. Like, I don't know. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing, which is
Yeah, but you're a
why
rhino collar.
I'm a rhino. It's whatever. I picked that randomly. Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Right. But it's like having a big ass bull stick its head in your car and put its horn
Mm-hmm.
through all the stuff. Like
That was fun.
that was pretty much food motivated, not me motivated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right.
Well, awesome episode.
Heck yeah. So lots of fun stuff today, listeners. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from us. And we really appreciate you sticking with us. And thanks for being part of the Kilted Balls podcast. This is
Yes.
Ballbuster signing off.
Filter Dragon Jerry, love you all.